Hi, Manya. I'm speaking right into the mic again, so hopefully this is good. Um, Thinking back to Friday, I was really, I was fascinated by the readings. We had read the Anion piece last year in Mike's class last summer, and it was interesting reading it again after this year having been in two different schools. First, my middle school student teaching placement in D20, which was between the middle class and I think it was the affluent professional, um, as far as the teaching strategies, and it was an IB school, so definitely more on student choice and creativity. And then spending 2 months in Spain in a school that ran just like the working class and the pedagogy of poverty that who was it that Haberman described, um, and realizing that I am personally, as a teacher, more comfortable in the former. I felt, and I actually had an interesting conversation with a couple of my teachers in Spain about yelling in the classroom because it's just not something I do. And I think with any group of students, you can get them used to that style. But for my kids in Spain, who, if you're not yelling at them, they're not going to listen. And so I had to get used to that. And my go-to, hold my hand up and wait for silence was not going to work with them. They don't respond to that at all. So being conscious of where they're coming from as students and having to meet them halfway. But I think if I had been there for longer, we could have figured it out. But they talked about how in Spanish schools they don't cultivate a culture of respect, that they instead it's based on getting away with things until you can't, which reminded me of the students manipulating the teacher and the students actually being in charge and listening um, because they chose to make it look like the teacher was in charge. So anyway, I found it interesting what you said about best practices don't exist, and because again, it comes down to knowing where our kids are coming from and knowing that what works for one kid won't work for another, realizing that certain students are more used to a certain type of teacher. And what else? Sorry about that pause. I'm just trying to think back to Friday, and because I did have a lot of thoughts on it. But I think my big takeaway, as always, is that it really does matter about where each kid is coming from, connecting student interest to all of it, and focusing on skills. Um, and then also that looking at the working class school and those strategies and keeping in mind they aren't bad strategies. It doesn't mean it's bad teaching or that those students are completely missing out, and that it doesn't mean that in the highest school strategies like that don't exist also. It's just what's the focus. And so going into a Denver middle school where I will have a wide range of students, figuring out my personal methods for classroom management, and that the teaching methodology that I'll be using up there is all focused on student interest. So I think from there and from my just general nature and my go-to strategy being that of make the classroom a zone of mutual respect, going from there and keeping in mind individual student needs and interests and working together as a class.